Into the Nexus is a production of amove.tv. Bookmark Amove TV for other great video games and esports podcasts. Into the Nexus is sponsored by listeners like you via patreon.com/ITN. Welcome back, everybody, to Into the Nexus, the podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, and I'm joined today, as always, by Kyle Fergusson. And not as always, but soon to at least be monthly, Derek, a.k.a. Dunk Train. Welcome back to the show, dude.
Hey, man. Good to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks is actually in order this week to our patrons over at patreon.com/ITN, because we hit the goal that we put up. It was like not even 2 months ago. And it's nuts. So we hit the new goal, and the goal was to pay you to come back monthly. And you actually had agreed to come on this week, whether we hit that goal or not. But it's cool. It's very cool that our patrons were that stoked about having you be a semi-regular contributor to the cast.
I mean, the timing worked out perfectly. You know, right after Try Hard for Good, having something to discuss and hitting the goal, everything just worked out nicely.
Yeah, it did. It did. So, Kyle, I've kind of trounced right over you and just threw to Dunk. How you doing? How's Heroes treating you this week?
That's okay, man. I'm here every week. This is special, and I'm really excited to have Dunk here because I think we're all in need of a little bit of perspective this week. Things have changed, and for our new players, they have always been a certain level of madness, it seems, over the last 2 weeks, whereas us on the beta front of long ago are scratching our heads a bit, and I'm excited to get schooled on Heroes of the Storm today. Be the student for once.
So you hear that? We're not going to stop you from just raining your opinions down on top of us, Derek.
Okay.
So before we get going too heavily into the news, we do want to throw some promotion the way of Con Before the Storm. We've mentioned it on a couple episodes now. But they are a conference that takes place the night before BlizzCon. Kyle, both you and I have taken place in this conference inside the Hilton, the Anaheim Hilton, multiple years now. They put on a really good show. A lot of effort goes into this. We're not getting any money out of this, but we might be getting a venue to have a kickin' party the night before BlizzCon, because we are the Con Before the Storm's first stretch goal on their Kickstarter. If they hit their first stretch goal, which they are a mere like hundreds of dollars away from, it's very close. Instead of making everyone walk a mile from where the convention is to the bowling alley to have a party, we're gonna have it right there in the Hilton. And we also don't need to run if we're doing if we're doing a panel at Con Before the Storm. We're not going to have to run in between multiple functions. So we're just going to have it there at the Hilton. If we hit the next goal, we're very close to it. So check out kickstarter.conbeforestorm.com. There's no the in that URL. You did hear correctly. So we're excited about that. Definitely looked like we're going to hit it anyway, but figured it was worth mentioning again, if not just for our goal, for the stretch goals beyond it, because it is a really awesome event that is put together just by the community members around Blizzard Games. So check it out. And now with that, let's get into it. It's there's some stuff to talk about this week. Let's get into Heroes of the Storm news.
We're on, boys! Ha-ha! Let's liven up this place!
Point me to the stage.
Click the play button, and let's get started.
All right. So, Dunk, you are here, and Try Hard for Good has kicked off. As a matter of fact, I believe your coaching duties are at an end.
Yes, my coaching duties are over. So basically, Try Hard for Good was 2 stages. The first stage is complete. That was the coaching stage. All the coaches and all the players who are getting coached all got fresh accounts with neutral MMR, and then the coaches and players played together for a week in unranked modes, and now the players are playing on their own starting this week in the ranked Hero League.
That is awesome. Now, you were coaching Skara, correct?
Yep, coaching Skara, which was really cool for me. I've known about Skara since league streaming and all that stuff, so it was really cool to see members of that community who've been established for so long come over and try out Heroes.
That's awesome. And I had a good time watching it, because I don't know, I went into watching it with some baggage, thinking, oh, these League of Legends pros, they're coming in. They probably, they probably have an ego of some sort. They're probably going to come in. I wonder how they're going to handle being students. And dude, Scar was awesome. I loved how open he was. Like that very first game, he just went in and was he seemed completely at ease with the fact that he knew almost nothing about the game.
Yeah, he was super chill about it, and he seemed to have a really open mind as far as like what heroes to try and play, like what talent builds to go. Like it was a lot of fun actually to see the game through fresh eyes. There's just so many things that you don't realize you know about heroes, or so many things you take for granted, like because you just build layers upon layers of knowledge. And then when someone comes in, even someone who knows MOBAs really well but comes in and plays heroes, which is so different, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's like a zillion things I need to teach you in a week. It's not enough time.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you start, or where did you start with him?
Okay, so I didn't, focus on like a lesson plan or anything super serious like that. My impression of like learning MOBAs is the most important thing is to just jump in, play games, and get a feel kind of for how all the heroes interact with each other. So that was my goal, is just start the game. His first game was on Zeratul, which was kind of a disaster, way too tough of a hero to like figure everything out. But even just through the rest of the week, trying all the heroes so you can learn the basics of their abilities and stuff, I think is just the most important thing for a new player, is to just feel out the characters and see how team fights flow, that sort of thing.
I'm glad to hear that, because we get asked that all the time from new players or current players who want to get their friend or their spouse into the game, and you're not sure where to start. And we always mention that it's probably a good bet to trial the heroes. Granted, the older the game gets, the more daunting of a task that becomes. But it really does. It pays out if like knowing, just having a feel for the range on Power Slide on ETC. If you've never played out ETC, you never plan to play him again. Just having experienced it at least once, I think, goes a long way to knowing how to play against that hero.
Absolutely. And you have to learn, there's just too much to learn that you'll never figure out if you only play one hero, or it'll take you forever. So I think trying everyone once, or even if not everyone, like at least the most common heroes, so you get the feel of a lot more sides of each matchup is important.
Yeah, like actually, fun question. Who would you say is like just uncommon, like a safe skip? Like Medivh, you could probably just skip Medivh.
It's funny. I would have told him to skip Medivh, but he was telling me that he wasn't really interested in playing like the most meta hero or the most OP hero or whatever. He wanted to play the weird heroes. So I'm like, oh god, you're gonna be a Medivh player, aren't you? And so I think Medivh was the only character when we were going through, like he was playing each character once. Like Medivh's the only one he went back to multiple times to play during the I'm still trying each hero phase.
I guess I can understand that. Medivh's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was funny to see how he reacted to Varian in the same way. The protected status to Skara was this divine discovery that he couldn't believe was inside of a video game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's something I hadn't thought of either. Kind of that. Maybe we all felt that way when Medivh first came out, right? It's something that was only on Divine Shield before that. Medivh came out and it's, oh my gosh, this protected is so broken, you can't hurt him at all. Like, so it's kind of that experience again, even though all of us are now used to the Medivh protection.
Yeah, actually, you're just giving me flashbacks now of when Medivh was announced, and we were all like, "Oh my god, Divine Shield on that short of a cooldown, this is gonna break the game."
Yeah. Turns out, game over. GG.
Yeah, turns out, totally fine. It's totally fine. It's all okay now. So, were there any other core concepts about heroes that seemed like they were kind of hard to get across? Like team leveling. Obviously, it comes over from League of Legends. That team leveling is not a thing over there. Did it feel like that was a roadblock in any way, shape, or form?
I'm not sure the team leveling itself was that big of a roadblock. Like it's kind of a simple concept to understand when it's explained to you, but it's hard to grasp the implications, I guess. Like just how big a power spike is where they get a talent tier and you don't. Like that power spike is huge. The difference in power level between a team at, 6 and 7 or 12, 13, like even not even considering the heroic tier, it's still an enormous power differential. And I think that's something you don't quite grasp until you get it through your head. It's like, oh, they each get a talent. Like the team fight difference is huge. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that's also related to the team leveling that is hard to grasp is how important it is to not miss any experience. I hadn't played on like a fresh account in a long time, so that was kind of wild for me. because people just do not respect how much you need to soak lanes, how much you need to make sure tower like waves just don't die to tower with nobody around. People just don't get it that you can lose the whole game because you missed, 4 waves in top, so you're now 2 minutes behind on your, or like a minute behind on your level 10, so you miss the second objective. Like a huge snowball starts because you just missed some XP. And it's like, it's not one person's responsibility to be in that lane. Everyone on the team is going to basically have to adapt to where other people on the team go to do that. And that was something that kind of opened my eyes, because I've been playing, higher ranking and expecting people to notice soak lanes all the time.
I love you, like, tying that into time and thinking about missing out on XP as missing your timing, because hitting your timings is a concept that I think gamers from all walks of life understand, especially if you've ever played RTSs.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I feel laning, getting XP is just naturally divorced in most players' brains from hitting your level up times.
Yeah. It's like,
the strange thing is with the pacing of those other MOBAs, because they're such long games, I've seen a lot of players engage in the team fight and then go back to their pre-described, picked at the beginning of the match lanes to go.
That was
soak
something
again.
Scar did a lot of too. It's like team fight would happen, it'd break out, and he'd immediately go back to the lane he started the game in. So funny.
And that's the time to get something really, really important done, because the enemy team is dead. Take the objective, control the map, interact with it. But for them, when the map is always the same and the map doesn't necessarily have inside of it the mechanic to win, I can see why that would chasing and getting team kills and just returning to normal would be the go-to strategy.
Yeah. It was really funny.
Yeah. How about teaching him the talent system? You kind of take to that relatively quickly.
Yeah, I think talents made a lot of sense to him. I kind of wasn't super strict about, oh, here's the optimal build, you have to pick this build. I tried to give him some framework, I guess, to understand why certain talents were good when they are. But that was another place where at some point I just felt like kind of overwhelmed, in the sense of, okay, every hero, there's these talent tiers, and I know that some of the talents are really bad and basically traps, you should never take them. But a lot of the talents are like, oh, on this tier, there's 2 viable choices, kind of depends on the comps. And like, that's just way too much information to get across when he's playing 1 game on each hero, So I just tried to pick on the highlights, like, okay, if there's a must-pick talent on a tier, I'll make sure to mention that. If there's like a do not pick this ever talent on a tier, I'll make sure to mention that. But other than that, I was like, you can go any of these, and here's why this might be good. Like, Spell Shield might be good on this game because of X, Y, and Z hero, or, like Whirlwind removing roots on Sonya's level 4 is good, specifically in the Arthas matchup, that sort of thing I'd like to point out. But we didn't really go over every single talent on every tier, that sort of thing,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I like, if you focus on the must pick and the must avoids, I think over time you'll just you'll give him a good kind of scatter shot of why you should be picking and why you shouldn't be picking certain talents.
Yeah, hopefully you leave with the tools to evaluate the talents you want to pick in each game on your own, more than following a guide that just says, okay, take these talents,
Yeah. So how did you go in any specific order with the heroes, or like how did he, other than I really like Medivh, I'm going to keep playing Medivh, how did he select the heroes?
So at first I tried to get him to tell me like what kind of heroes he wanted to play. And in general, I got the sense he wanted to play mages, especially like assassins with mobility and weird heroes. So that's pretty much what we did, is just every time I threw out some suggestions. If he's like, oh, I want to play a melee this game, I gave him some suggestions. If he's like, I want to play a range this game, I gave him some suggestions. Like, some of the first ones I made sure he tried were Li Ming, because I knew he would enjoy that because of the resets. Just so much fun of a hero. Zeratul I made him try, because Zeratul is one of the heroes I personally think you can be the most impactful on if you're the best player. So even when you're learning the game, just having all these tools available, it would probably be overwhelming to a new player to have like Vorpal Blade, jump to the Singularity Spike, all these tools. But to somebody who's got an advanced MOBA pedigree, he has the mechanics, I think it's worthwhile to even start learning that early, just because it's something that gives you so much control over the game. I had him try Probius one game, and he didn't really like it, which I was kind of thankful for, because I wouldn't have wanted to train another dirty Probius picker into our hero league. But that turned out okay, because he didn't opt to continue playing that. But yeah, just ended up playing pretty much one game of everything, settled on a couple warriors he liked, a couple supports he liked, and then a bunch of assassins he was going to practice.
Was there any enemy heroes that you were really adamant about teaching him, certain interactions that he might face on a day-to-day basis?
Trying to remember, I know we played against a lot of Artanis, and that was something that's kind of hard to grasp, like how Artanis fights and, you know, how dangerous swaps are and how to avoid them, that kind of thing. That was something we talked a little bit about. Sylvanas is on Brax's holdout, for example. How devastating they are is something we talked about a little bit. In fact, I think Sylvanas was banned every game we played Braxis together, so he never got to actually experience it, but it was something I talked about a little because there's things where, like, you know, that hero is super powerful on that map specifically. It's like the only one in the rotation where she's insane, so we talked about that. Other than that, I'm not sure. You know, there was a lot of just kind of talking about stuff in general during the games and between the games, so I'm not sure what heroes I might have spoke more about or less or whatever. I know he really ended up being frustrated playing against Dahaka because there were Dahakas in a lot of our games, and he like kept getting wrecked by the global, and like Dahaka's damage output on melees is just so intense, and it's like little tiny chinks of damage, so you don't really notice like, oh, my health is all suddenly gone, even though it was over 4 seconds or whatever from this tank. So that was something that took some getting used to and like understanding Dahaka's kit.
Understandable that. I mean, and then he bursts and regenerates all his health that you thought you had worn through finally.
Yeah.
That can be a bit intimidating. You mentioned the maps there. How did he take to the multiple maps, and was that an exciting feature for him, or was it more perhaps troublesome when trying to get in these mechanics?
It felt like maybe a little overwhelming, even with the reduced map pool, I want to say. Like, the multiple maps is a cool concept, but I could definitely feel he was like kind of just letting me do all the, okay, this is a specific map thing you should think about, and then tell me what hero to play. Like, he was using me to bypass him having to decide what things map specifically he should do, you know, outside of just playing them. So like, I think the draft phase specifically related to the map pool was the most complicated and difficult portion of that. When it came to actually playing the maps, it's a lot simpler to just play the maps and enjoy the game, and, you know, it's still a MOBA. Whereas in the draft phase, I'm like, oh, Sylvanas and Rag are super broken on this map, but they're not broken on other maps, and it's hard to know every combination of those things for all the maps, you know?
Yeah, certainly. That's interesting.
I think I'm curious to follow that up, because all of this is available on Scara's Twitch. You can go back and rewatch it if you missed it. Would you, obviously 2.0 is here. A lot of people are trying out heroes either again or for the first time, not to mention the Overwatch cross promotion, which is giving me mixed feelings. But would you recommend going and watching your co-stream with Scara for a new player?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's good. It's probably it's going to be fun to watch because Scara is doing silly things. Even to Heroes veterans, you're going to have a fun time watching it. But two, I think there's probably a lot of information to learn. Just seeing even what Scara thought was important, like take note of what things he thought were important enough to ask about, is a good call, because then you have an idea of what somebody who's really experienced with MOBAs wants to know about the game, right? Like, if you're a new player, you've never played a MOBA, you don't know what things are important. So by watching this, especially, you can learn, okay, here's the things he automatically understands, and here's the things he understands enough to ask about. Because that's one of the first difficulty things, is what things actually matter. What do I want to learn about, right? When you get into the game, it's just, there's so much to learn, it's overwhelming.
I think one of my favorite interactions was watching, I believe it was Boy, see his first Ragnaros pop up on a fort. And also over the course of his climb, he realized that the Sonya Whirlwind was interruptible. And as he made his way through Platinum, slowly getting closer and closer to Diamond, people started CCing him. And that sweet strat of spinning to win slowly falled off.
I'd like that you could see that crescendo of the skill gap. You just see it as he rose up and like, nope, people understand how to counter this now.
Yeah. The Bragg Fort is something that Scara actually got wrecked by once too, and he was like, Somebody should probably make a highlight, actually, of all the times like Skara, Dyrus, and Voyboy saw the Rag Molten Core for the first time, because I know Skara's reaction was like, "Oh my god!" Like mind was blown, because it's like such a cool thing that we all thought it was cool when it came out, but we were kind of expecting it when we saw Rag was going to be a hero. So that was another thing that was really fun to see from someone else's perspective.
That being said,
that's true.
I've been geeking out over it again because Ragnaros is finally making it through the ban in my games for the first time in a while.
A little here and there. That's crazy. Actually, now that you think about it too, I mean, we can at least say, oh, Sylvanas, she probably screams about something. She has arrows, but these guys probably don't even have that sort of Super Smash Bros. Background information, since they're all League all the time.
Yeah, Skara knew most of the big lore characters. Like, he's played other Blizzard games, so he did know a lot of the big lore characters, but, not enough, I would say, to really know what to expect from most of the heroes.
He's not completely up to date on his Brightwing lore.
Right. I think only Gillyweed is. Nobody else is up to date on Brightwing lore.
And that's why I like Gilly so much. Well, very awesome. Folks out there, if you want to check this out, I mean, it's still going, but if you specifically want to see the coaching phase, you're going to have to check it out on Skara's profile. Go back through his past broadcasts and check it out at twitch.tv/Skara, SCARRA. I highly recommend you go and do so. Some really good stuff over there. So moving along this week, we got an official post from Blizzard on the Heroes site, bringing us some Heroes of the Storm guides. We haven't seen anything like this from them in ever. When was the last time they put out like an official guide?
And how would you talk to your team at Blizzard? Guys, I want to put together a website. I know we're working a lot and we're constantly putting out updates every week. Let's see if we can actually put together enough information to inform new players, even though we're going to change it the next week. So it's actually this culmination of all the more timeless guides that the community has created is one they put out today. And of course, the core concepts being their introduction to Heroes of the Storm, their self-written guide as to what they felt was most important, leading with the oddball heroes, perhaps to maybe dissuade some anger as people see Lost Vikings or Cho'Gall or Abathur for the first time. And then they go into maps, a little bit of the drafting. I was curious, reading this, if this was your very first introduction, you weren't going to watch any videos at all, you were just going to dive right in, what would you both like to see added to this guide at this point?
To the Blizzard Core Concepts guide you're talking about?
Right, if you could insert sort of a, addendum by Dunk Train.
Yeah.
And here's the most important things I would like you to know before joining this game. What would those be?
I mean, to the Core Concepts page, maybe the only thing I would add is a little more information about kind of how to build a balanced team comp. Because this is kind of an introductory thing. It doesn't go into any real strategy information, but it would at least be useful to know if I'm going to log on and play with my friends, like, what should we pick, right? Like, because if you log on with all your friends and then you pick 5 assassins, it's going to be a little weird. So maybe something about generic, what's a decent team comp would be good. Or try to have a rounded team comp type thing thrown in there.
Yeah, maybe just something a little World of Warcrafty that, in most cases, you'll at least want a tank and a support to fill this out. Yeah. I've certainly seen my biggest offenders over the course of this week, seeing a lot of new players in the game, seeing a lot of ungemmed accounts. People are attacking very Enduring Protected like crazy, and I would love for some sort of addendum here that talks about the powers as they increase. And while Varian might be vulnerable at level 1 in those moments, continuing to apply damage to his face during that protected status come level 4 is a huge problem. In particular, something we've all learned to live with over time, living bombs on Kael'thas.
I like that. That's a good point. Living bombs maybe don't fall under this, but I like the idea of maybe, because they've got the little headers in here, maybe a header that says when and when not to attack. Like, just that simple little thing. You see a shield come out, leave it alone. especially if it came from somebody with pink hair.
The weirdest one, which I didn't really recognize as maybe being a huge issue. It's not. I mean, when I think of these, I immediately think of Zarya shields, right, and living bombs being one of the main things that new players are just going to stand in, attack into, and cause issues with. But Hand of Ragnaros, level 7, on the big flame man.
Yeah.
If he hits 2 heroes, 2-second cooldown now for that splash damage. I've seen Ragnaros 1v4 people this week as they've continued to bunch up in front of him. And how do you relay that level of information when it's such a core concept to check those talents for us in the higher leagues, but it comes at an odd time. You're just playing the game here, and then all of a sudden, why was Ragnaros any different? Why did his damage output change?
I wonder if there maybe needs to be some in-game element that can let you get a little more readability from that sort of thing, because like the Hand of Rag thing you mentioned is a huge difference in how powerful Ragnaros is, whether you have 2 people sit melee range or just 1, right? So it's difficult actually to check talents. You have to press tab, make sure you switch to the talents thing, because everybody knows you're looking at the DPS meter, right? So you have to tab, go to talents, and then like scan for the right one. Maybe Death Recap or something needs to add like a here's the talents they had, so you could at least skim over them there or something. I don't know, but I noticed it was something where like I was even having difficulty tracking the talents of all the heroes when I was trying to explain like why certain talents were impactful spikes, you know, for Skara. When I'm trying to explain to him, oh, this talent here is important for this character because of this thing. Like, there's a lot of those that we now have understood, but it's not something where new players, it's just going to feel like, oh my gosh, I have no idea why this character did so much damage suddenly, you know?
Yeah.
Right. It's something that we wouldn't even react to today is level 16 Earthgrass Totem on Rhaegar. And you're running away and all of a sudden you go, oh, wait, hang on, what's that? And you die.
Not to get too hung up on the Hand of Rag thing, but I guess to open it up a little wider, you know, compare that to something like Varian's Protected Status, which is loud and instantly noticeable, or think back to when Tychus was all the rage and his trait ability. That, you know, it's very subtle. It is very easy to fall into the trap of letting him land those attacks on you, Tychus, when that's happening. And the Hand of Rag, the same. There's really no indication that he hit what he needed to, and I don't know what that looks like without getting it too visually cluttered. But like in my head, I'm like, just put a 1 out of 2 and a 2 out of 2 over the 2 people that got hit that gave him that reset, which could work. And I would argue is consistent with how loud and in your face Protected is over Varian. Do you think it's an issue of consistency, Dunk? Do you think that if one thing is very, like, it's literally written out in text and something else that's important isn't, that it should either all be subtle or all be not subtle?
I think it's just Protected was something that's obvious because they already had the framework there for that effect to be obvious because of Medivh. You definitely can't write text out for, like, every, you know, contextual or, like, has to have something happen talent, but maybe something so that people can grasp it a little more easily without cluttering the game state.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe little glowing embers, and there's 2 of them when he hits it. I don't know.
that something like that would be nice. What I want to avoid is the PNG hover images that happen with something like Zul'jin's marked or a Butcher brand. And when you're looking at that, like this week, because of these Try Hard for Good streams, I went out and watched a bunch of League of Legends for the first time in forever, watching these guys do their main streams. And you'll see just status effects and people turning into golden statues, and you're just wondering why and what that is.
Now I just want a commentary stream by Kyle of all of your questions watching League of Legends.
It's infinite. I now know how much interaction goes into a MOBA, and every time there's a layer deeper, and you can say, oh, that comp got double support because, but you could just go.
Yeah. Yes, you could. Well, if you want to check out Core Concepts, it's up on the official Heroes website right now. So go check it out. We also have links in the show notes to both that and the collection of community guides that they posted just earlier today. Now, last kind of big piece of news to discuss this week is that the HGC patch the Genji patch is coming to HGC this very weekend. Notably missing is, Genji himself. But everything else from that patch will be hitting competitive heroes this weekend.
Yep.
A bit of a jump, skipping right over Cassia, but, I mean, let's face it, being a month in the past felt bizarre.
Yeah, I'm really glad they're pushing it.
But this is really scary, too, because when you start thinking about it, skipping over the Cassia patch, there was so much that came with that. I mean, let alone the Probius buff. Of all these things, I mean, I have written down Cassia's joined the game, of course, the Cho'Gall buff, Ragnaros nerfed, the Murky buff that came, that Probius, the ETC massive nerf, the ETC nerf, the Shields nerfs that came through, and now 3 supports kind of rework, update, and certainly their damage output greatly increased. What will HGC look like in your eyes, Dunk, for this weekend? And do you think it'll show anything that will walk away in our home game saying, oh, that's how we do it?
Well, I think the first question is, I think the last Tassadar nerfs probably were the final nail in the coffin. I don't think we'll be seeing much Tassadar at all, if any, now. Because I think the other secondary supports just do his job better now. I think actually Uther and Lili just do what Tassadar was doing better in terms of, we already have a main support, we're going to get a secondary support. So I think we're still going to see quite a bit of double support, but instead of it being the Tas plus support, it'll be Zarya or Uther or Lili as the auxiliary support.
Can it be as one-to-one as maybe the shields came through to help someone survive the burst damage? So with a Lili blind and high damage, and an Uther that's doing pretty decent damage too with the armor now on cast, is it just covered? And now we don't need someone like Tassadar?
I mean, I think so. I think that's probably Uther's armor is just insane when you pair it with another healer. Because the armor amplifies the effective health increase you get from having another healer heal you, having Uther plus another healer is so much defensive power towards your carry or whatever. I think we're going to be seeing a ton of Uther in HGC this weekend.
That's very true. I never really thought about that, but if you're stacking health on top, while it may be temporary, that's not as powerful for healers because the armor makes all your healing more effective because their health wasn't decreased by that amount first. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, that's messy. That is dirty.
I didn't really think about that either, but I'm thinking about that game earlier, Kyle, where we had a random Brightwing with us. I was on Uther and some dude on Greymane. That Greymane was the Terminator.
Yeah.
There was no reason for him to stop, and Lili's damage is really high. I'm seeing her get first bans at the moment, which are a little frightening. Almost always Water Dragon builds, Winds builds behind that. Where do you think Ariel lands in this?
I think Ariel definitely has room in the meta right now. I know there's kind of some memeing that went on because of the resurrection changes, but I don't think you should take Resurrect ever. It's just still not good, guys. Please stop taking it.
It's the XP loss, right?
I don't even know if it's that, but it's just it's so much worse to bring someone back 6 seconds after they died than it is to they just don't die in the first place and you also happen to do 500 damage to the whole enemy team. I don't know. I just think the tempo, the time gap between when you cast Resurrect and when they come back is so bad. But she did get some buffs, and I think she should definitely have a spot in the meta. I think, specifically, I think Uther Ariel is actually really good.
It seems that way. The amount of CC that brings, and we're going to talk about, why double support is kind of taken over here in a few minutes, just covers everything. I mean, we won a game today with solo tank Sonya because we had double CC support.
It was beautiful. I got to be the Sonya. I felt like the prettiest girl at the prom.
And I was on the Ariel in my beautiful skin, so I truly was the prettiest.
You were
girl,
the prettiest. You were the prettiest player.
I mean, that was the real buff to Ariel, though. The new skins. Oh my gosh.
On that star mount
huge
too.
buff.
You just look Fantastic.
So I want to get this. So Dunk, you were at the summit, as were we. I'm not crazy, right? I'm not just trying to like pull our listeners' legs. I think the thing everyone was losing their minds the most about were the skins. Like we got onto the floor with the playtest stations, and the first thing most of us went and did was just scroll through the collection. Like, oh my god, the new Star Princess Li Ming. Oh my god, look at that. I was happy because I was there like, oh, I'm the Blizzard nerd. I'm really into lore, and I was so stoked to see all these like professional casters and people who are better than me at this game. Also geeking out about cosmetics. Yeah, exactly. It made me very happy that I'm not the only one who cares about my paper doll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of awesome skins that came with 2.0 though, so like,
will the pros go on to think that ETC is dead, as we have sort of at home?
I don't think so. I think he still brings a lot to competitive, actually. I know that it felt like he was really bad, and the win rates suggested that as well when the changes first went through. But after they fixed the armor not working on Q, and I think
I didn't know that was an issue. Oh my goodness.
Actually, that was one of the reasons why he was so bad, is because he just wasn't getting his passive armor when he queued. I think like ETC is still good, and I think he will have a spot. Every time I've thought ETC is dead, he actually hasn't been. So I think someone will find a way to use ETC. He's granted probably not like the super high priority he was, but I think he's still got a spot. Anytime you can mosh pit, like, you just have to have a spot somewhere in competitive because that ability is insane.
Has Probius gone too far? Will we see him in Pro, or is it actually the map pool and things like Sky Temple Braxis where he just shines too strong?
I think we're going to continue to see Probius. He didn't need buffs, I don't think. As much as I like to hate on him because he's a probe, I think he is actually pretty strong right now. And at least the more adventurous teams will play him. If not, he'll actually start getting picked up as like a serious option, you know?
You don't think just as a map specific pick? You think he's just always going to be a threat of a Probius?
No, I'm pretty sure he's map specific. He might not be like one map only, but he definitely excels on certain maps compared to others. Like, you don't want him on a map where you have to move around a lot. So he's obviously more like a Braxis where you can secure the point really well type thing.
Yeah, not too good on Hanamura where the payload moves outside of your zones.
Every 5 seconds. Yeah.
You put your zones in the path of their payload.
Could do that. I think Cassia's good. I think she's really good. She basically she's a range carry that melee assassins pretty much cannot ever kill, because all you have to do is walk away from them and they can't kill you at all. So I think she definitely has a place in the meta game. Like, anytime the enemy is relying on a melee assassin to threaten your range carry, Cassia is going to be just totally bonkers. And then in the 4-man lane maps, or even if you're in like a 3v3 lane or something, Charge Strikes is like a secret OP talent. It's absolutely insane in team fighting or skirmishing with multiple people. The splash range is huge, and the damage output is insane while you have it on. Plus, since she has armor, she gets more benefit from healers than other DPS, so I think she's going to be good.
Interesting. Charge Strike is very interesting to me just because of the objectives with monsters. If you can still kind of farm the pit while doing this massive damage. I have no idea why this increases your basic attack damage by 25%. Bouncing on heroes in other MOBAs is good enough to take up an entire button.
Yeah, and the uptime is huge too. Like, 8 seconds is a long time. Yeah. If you're like fighting on Infernal Shrines or something and they have to have their melee, on the shrine, and you just get to auto attack the minions and like get damage on it's so good.
I'm curious where Cassia fits into a comp. Late game, she has tons of poke, depending on which build she does. She seems like she could bruiser, but blinds aren't enough CC to keep a backline safe. Do you take her with double tank?
I think you play her as like your primary range threat. You definitely need to bring as much CC as possible to let her actually land hits, because she's pretty low mobility. Like, I know she has the gap close on E, but it's so risky for a range to only have a single direction gap close, like go in. So I think you definitely need to have the stronger front line and have forward momentum to justify having her as your range carry. So like the double tank, double support Cassia lineup, I think is a real thing you could do. I'm not sure that she's strictly better there than, say, just like a Greymane or something, who's also insane on this patch, but I think she has a spot. And as a counter pick to things like Zeratul, she'll be really good.
What about Cho'Gall? It's a new map, Hanamura, walking along. You're a giant turret. Is it good? Will we see him on other maps? I mean, the buff's pretty powerful in quick match. Cho'Gall's doing really well. In a drafted environment, not so much.
Yeah, I think the problem with Cho'Gall is just the draft. There's so many options now for percent health damage. I think there's too many things for you to like pick them all away or ban them out without tipping your hand that you're going for Cho'Gall too early. I don't expect to see him, thrive in the competitive scene. If it happens, once or twice this weekend because of like sneaky, oh, haha, we picked Cho'Gall in the last 2 spots or whatever, and nobody was really paying attention for it, I could see that happening, but I don't expect to see, the reign of terror that Cho'Gall is going to have on competitive.
The Cho'Gall meta has not arrived.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's kind of disappointing, but also not surprising in the least.
Yeah, no one wants to be oppressed by Cho'Gall and then come Hero League. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
I'm having enough troubles with these Gul'dans at the moment. It's like, do you want to do everything hard? There's no reason. We can just Kael'thas and sit behind the walls.
Is that's what's driving you nuts right now is Gul'dan? You must live in a wonderful world because that is not the biggest issue I've been running into this week.
What have you been facing?
Mostly just horrible human beings. Horrible people that let the tiniest little things completely ruin their lives, and they have to take it out on the other 4 members on their team. But I'm not trying to goad you into anything here, Kyle, because I know you were trying to stay away from your own personal salt this week, but I also, too, have been plagued by the first pick Chromies.
Yeah.
Hasn't been.
This week was really difficult for me. Not only did I emerge from a show into the living room to find my wife crying because she was on Illidan and no one was doing anything right in her eyes. And she was just completely broken by these new players. She loves to play the map. She loves mercenary camps, and that is not how you play right now. And for me, I think back to my days in StarCraft. I'm an Ultralisk, fully upgraded Hydrolisk kind of guy. I want to strangle you with my amazing economy, and you don't get any bases, and the creep is coming up on top. It's even growing on your buildings now thanks to Legacy of the Void, right? Like, it looks beautiful. And I'm going to invade you, and it's going to be fancy. There's going to be burrowed Baneling mines. And that's how I play Nazeebo. I play Kael'thas right now, and that's how I started the season, was with these very strong late game. We're just going to hold out. We're going to control the map, win the objectives. Let me get stacks. But with the influx of new players, particularly what I'm assuming is League players, of course, they chase infinitely, and they hunt forever. And that particular, it was the same Chromie 3 times first picked. Just bad luck for my heroes. Just kept queuing, going, let's forget that next one. Let's do it. And got the same Chromie 3 times in a row on my team. And that meant I couldn't do Nazeebo or Kael'thas because we had this first pick investment in heavy spell damage. And I did break a little bit. It was intense. I have certainly learned now that I got to hunt. I got to lose some of my individuality, some of the joyous things that I love about heroes like mercenary camps, like making these big strategic contributions, and just go for the team fight and start to be a murder machine and get those picks and start those staggers instead. And then after the fight is over, maybe if I ping enough times, I'll get people to do a merc camp or take the objective.
Yeah.
Because of this, I've moved on to Sylvanas, oddly enough, but she has a really tough time against Genji. I want higher team fight damage. Nazeebo has to scale up. Sylvanas has fantastic damage across the entire game. Maybe lacking a little bit in the late game just because CCs start piling up so high. But I still want to be able to do something by myself. So I'm a little back to the drawing board, which at my desk with my notebook is really exciting. In game, rather frustrating at the moment.
Yeah, I feel you there. I went in expecting to like Sagara a lot. I was going to play a lot in the Zebo, and then I remembered, oh wait, the map changed. These games are not going to go long enough for Nazebo to really shine. And it just ended up being, apparently I'm a warrior now. All I played this week were warriors, Arthas, Sonya. My first Anub game in like 2 weeks. We crushed, by the way. Anub is ridiculous.
Yeah, Anub is insane right now.
Yeah,
Anub is a hero who is much better against double support than most also. Like, he's just unkillable without the damage of having the extra damage dealer on your team. And, like, he regens so much from Locust Swarm. Anub is really good right now.
Yeah, not to mention when I don't get stuck on the team with the Chromie, it's awesome to be the Anubarak against the Chromie.
Yeah.
That's the exact reason why Sylvanas, sort of the cap on her head for why I'm on her right now is silence. If I can silence the whole back line and that double support, we'll win the fight.
Yeah. Well,
but getting Sylvanas is near impossible.
Actually, that's what I was about to ask, and I didn't want to cut you off, but how the hell are you even getting Sylvanas? I tried picking her in like 8 games this week, and just no, not going to happen. You have to be first pick.
Man. And I also spent the whole weekend working on Arthas, like I was going to get him for some reason. So I am so excited for this strategy section today because I'm shopping.
Okay, cool. Very cool. It must be a league difference because Arthas was up for grabs in basically every game I played. There's only one game I can think of this week where I really was gunning for Arthas and I didn't get him. But whatever the case is, this was an unplanned little chat here. Dunk, do you want to get in on this? What's been grinding your gears lately?
Oh, grinding my gears in Heroes. I don't know. I kind of just take it all as it comes, man. Nothing really bothers me about playing Hero League right now. I just assume that you can't win every game and let it go.
That's a beautiful
just don't get annoyed.
Beautiful way to look at life. If only I could always keep to that. But yeah, I get tilted.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, we're already kind of cannibalizing our strategy talk a little bit because we are going to be talking about double support and how that pertains to the map rotation. But before we do that, let's thank our patrons one more time. Patreon.com/ITN. Huge thanks to our producers, Declan H, Cheesy Bob, and Mythdoll. But on this episode specifically, thank you to Brock H, Martin A.H, Kevin S, William W, and Tyler O. Everyone gave me last names this week. It's wonderful. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. We're still moving up even past the Dunk Train goal, which means a lot. We hit the goal, and then it was the first of the month, so there were some declines, and it went back below, and everyone was like, oh my God, does this mean we're not getting Dunk Train? So anytime we're a little bit above a goal is a good thing because, you go to Target, and your credit card gets stolen, and your bank cancels it, and you don't remember. So very cool. Thank you, everyone, for continuing to support the show, even though we're past a goal now. So it means a lot. Now let's do it. Let's have our formal discussion about the map rotation and the double support in this week's strategy talk.
Choose a talent.
Choose a talent.
Talent? That seems generous.
Yeah, no clue what that means.
So the map has rotated, and we are now in a world where you want 2 supports. Everyone is picking 2 supports. Dunk Train, you might be known a little bit as a support player. I don't know why. What do you? My question to you is how do we get here? What were the building blocks along the way throughout the patches with the map rotation? How do we end in this world where now all of a sudden we're going to support, in a lot of cases also to warrior, and putting the majority of our damage in the hands of one player on our team?
It's a lot of factors, but if I had to point to a couple over the past 6 or so months, the inclusion of more and more armor in the game is better for supports because armor increases how effective your healing is relative to the opponent's damage. Secondly, the roster right now does not have a lot of meta viable pushing power. Which in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you think about double supports, one of the things it really lacks is wave control, wave clear, and pressure on buildings. And right now it's not a problem to lack that because you don't have the split push Zagara, taking down your walls in 30 seconds. You don't have the Sylvanas every game where the teams are just zerging 5-man to forts, that sort of stuff. So because those strategies aren't very common, you can run double support and give up the early game wave clear without falling behind. Also, damage dealers, I think, like, the amount of advantage you get from having an extra damage dealer right now isn't as much as before, maybe, because there's enough damage in the game to kill any target who seriously mispositions, and you don't need the extra damage dealer for that. So it feels like all the fights right now are poke doesn't matter at all because there's so much healing going on, and nobody's getting a big snowball advantage from clearing buildings unless they won a huge team fight. And the way you do that is somebody mispositions so the healers can't actually save them, and you kill the target. And instead of the team disengaging, they keep trying to fight. So I think the combination of the armor, the lack of pushing power, and the facility for any one carry, plus the bruisers who do so much damage right now to kill targets who get out of position, combines to form a very support-friendly meta.
What do you think we got away from push power compositions? I mean, Sylvanas is still getting banned for obvious reasons, but it's not like bans are going towards Zagara. She's still available.
Yeah. Well, honestly, from my perspective, the super powerful pushing heroes are not very fun for the game to begin with. I mean, they're kind of, in my view, they need to exist in the game, sort of like a pressure release valve for like, okay, you can't play 5 supports because if you do, they should just be able to play pushers 1 in each lane and kill all your building. Like, that's in theory what the pushers should do as like a sort of pressure release valve, like against multi-support comps. But right now, I think the power level of Zagara maybe is just a tad low to actually threaten buildings meaningfully enough, and maybe Asmodan or like the Gazlo isn't a real hero type thing means that there's not enough options to actually pressure these supports on a like macro level, which is where they should be weakest.
That's an interesting observation. I've also heard the theory that perhaps this is because when things get a little out of hand, it's often the damage dealers that get the nerfs, and our supports and tanks have sort of leaked in, and with these buffs like what happened to Uther, Ariel, and Lili upping their damage, it just means, sure, skip a damage dealer. We can get it other places.
Yeah, damage dealers do tend to eat a lot of nerfs, and I think the recent reworks to supports have been overall like huge buffs. If you think about like even going as far back as the Rhaegar rework was like a catastrophic level buff, it immediately had to be hugely nerfed. The Malfurion rework was like an enormous buff, immediately needed nerfs, still needs nerfs. Like Lucio came out at the power level of like reworked Malf, so he's insanely strong. And now you've got Uther who's getting reworked. So it's like there's like a huge power level creep on supports as they're adding all these tools to their kits and all these, like, they're adding so much to the support and they're not like losing healing for it, you know? Like Malf basically puts out as much healing as he did before, except now he's doing it while he's taking Twilight Dream, so he has a huge nuke and a 4-second silence, whereas before, to get this much healing he had to take Tranquility, right? Like, and spend an extra talent here so he didn't have cleanse for the longer that sort of stuff. So by when they rework these supports at the same time as they rework tanks and add armor into the game, it's like, okay, you're really pushing the power and the tools of the supports, and the damage dealers I don't think have gotten the same level of power additions.
So it sounds like it was a perfect storm, more or less. The armor compounding with like a new, the rework on Malfurion, a sexy new support like Lucio, and then they're like, well, shoot, Malfurion's awesome, Lucio is a blast, let's rework some of our old and crusty supports, Uther and Lili, come on up, you're amazing now.
Yeah.
I do wonder how much Lucio is responsible for this, almost like adding a second Brightwing to the game that made people deathball around him, basically group as 5 and just keep winning, stay on top of him. And then we went, wait, his early game healing's too low, let's throw a second support. Oh my god, it works amazing. We should do this with everybody, guys. We lost Lucio, whatever, just make it happen again.
Yeah, I mean, Lucio's an interesting character to exist in the game as well, because he kind of, not only is he great when your team is deathballing, but he kind of forces the opponent's team to deathball also, because you can't afford to risk like having a split pusher and trying to contest or like hold something off 4-man, because he also has a huge speed boost, so he'll just hard engage on you. So you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, do you death ball against the Lucio, who's insane in the death ball, or do you not death ball against the Lucio, who's then got the hard engage, not necessarily the complete hard engage in his kit, but the only hard engage tool that even remotely allows you to connect on an enemy team. It's like Bloodlust or Lucio's E. Those are the only ways to connect on a team like that. So
I think, Bloodlust has this problem too. It's a timed ability. So to me, it's just like disengage, get out, walk away from the timed. But the slowness, I wish Lucio could just teleport, because the slowness of which he chases you down, and he's just going to push you backwards. But here it comes as he pokes you with that little gun, and you're just going, oh, this is going to be the longest death on Earth. I'm Varian. I'll last for a good 30 seconds, but here it comes.
Yeah. When you're going to die to that Lucio just walking you down, you're like, oh, why me? Not like this.
And go Cassia.
So
I wonder, too, if this is something we'll see be a bigger problem throughout Hero League and home play, because it's reactionary. It's easier. When I'm throwing out these flame strikes, which 2 weeks ago were going great, throw them out. Oh, look at that. Fantastic. 8% of everyone's health thanks to my talents. And now I put out a flame strike, and 8 seconds later, they're all full health. I've done nothing. It's a reactionary role. If you make a mistake, we'll heal through it. And these supports often have so much CC that maybe that solo tank Sonya is just easier than doing something like double tank, with one tank being the front, absorbing everything as Muradin, but then he leaps backwards and regenerates while Arthas takes over the front line. But make sure Arthas shoots his Howling Blast and locks down Tracer, so she doesn't, and it's all just these proactive movements instead.
It just is easier, right, to heal off damage than to like make something happen, I guess. Is that what you're kind of trying to get at?
I think, Kyle, we were talking about this a little bit earlier off air during our games, and I think we were speaking a lot to pickup games specifically. When there are, 2 or more people that you are not communicating with on comms on your team, it seems that in this double support world, it just makes winning easier, because, like Kyle said, you can just compensate for somebody else's mistake. We had a KT on our team that's positioning was, I have no other word to describe it other than bonkers. The most bonkers positioning I've ever seen. And we still won, because every time KT got caught out and 75% of his life disappeared, that other 25% might as well have been locked. His health was going nowhere at that point. We compensated for it through raw healing. So I think that was that what you were getting at, Kyle?
Yeah, certainly. And in the pro scene, we can make the assumption that, double support, we'll just burst through it because we're all professional targeters and we're going to pick one guy and kill him. So what's up with Vala is kind of my thought next. Is that a problem? This double tank, double support, single super DPS. What can Blizzard do about that? Or is it even an issue in their eyes? That's just a solid comp.
It's hard to, that sounds like a well-rounded comp, like, especially if you consider it from, not such narrow roles. Like, imagine a comp that's like a hard CC tank, bruiser, range carry, like half support and full support. Like, that sounds like a well-rounded comp. It sounds like something that should be healthy to exist in the game. I think the problem just shows up, or people feel like it's a problem, when, because the two half supports, that just feels like poke isn't rewarded and like proper positioning isn't rewarded as much. I think that's really what the pro scene dislikes. And even then, it's still, double support's not like super dominant in the pro scene, I think, because they have the coordination to like isolate targets and kill them in CC rotations type stuff. But it is a problem still, I think.
Is that something that people should be striving to at home? If I'm first pick and I grab up a Vala, would it be effective of me to say, hey guys, let's do it. I want this, I want double support, I want double tank.
Yeah, right now, you're probably going to win more Hero Leagues by playing like double support with one of the half supports and having a bruiser on your team than if you try to play any other style right now. The bruisers are really strong. Like Sonya Dahaka Even Arthas to a slightly lesser extent can all play the melee bruiser role and do really well at it. I mean, Ragnaros kind of to a lesser extent also, but I think you just don't need to play any of the finesse characters like Zeratul or Valera or, like the squishy melee assassins. You just don't need to play those right now. You can just play a bruiser and double healer and kind of walk at your opponents and sit on the objectives. And they can't really make the finesse plays because your supports will cover each other. And there's no way something like a Zeratul can kill a DPS through double support. It's hard even through one support,
Is that right in the world? Should we be able to, you mentioned the finesse, and that's where my mind goes immediately. If you have to dissect the team, that's how you're going to do it with a Void Prison or with a Mighty Gust. But you're made of paper out there on the field. How do you engage into that? And is it something that we should all be adding to our rosters when we see that coming down the pipeline? Oh, there's the ball. Oh, already two supports. Let me take a Zeratul or a Falstad, or would you recommend another tool?
No, I don't think you can really play like squishy melee assassins into double support because you're going to be putting yourself out of position to hit their backline probably, and the double support means your target won't die, so you'll probably end up dying because supports do just enough damage to like threaten you and kill you when they're like mid-laner's turn. So I think you don't ever play the Zeratul or something like that unless you're Glaurung into double support, So for your healing experience, you're probably better off just fighting this fire with fire, right? Just like, oh, they're going double support, we should probably go double support.
And we'll just smack into them a little better than they smack into us.
Just both teams just run into each other and then fight until everyone's dead.
just beat them on raw mechanics.
Yeah.
I also wonder how much the reduced map pool has to do with this, because we have gone down to a number of 2-lane maps here, and we're missing some of our long stacking maps like Tomb of the Spider Queen now.
Yeah. Tomb of the Spider Queen, like, because it's a rotation map and because wave control is so much more valuable, it's a map where like double support's going to be inherently less viable, right? So part of the impression is probably because of the smaller map pool. Like Braxis is really good to have like a support and a half on because it makes your 4-man so much stronger, especially because like the Lucio healing everyone is so efficient, or like an Ariel in that lane is so efficient in the 4-man. You can't really punish them for not having enough wave clear in Hanamura because it's only 2 lanes and the Mercs don't actually push. That's probably another side effect of Hanamura that people aren't recognizing is if you have a significantly advantaged PvE team on other maps, you'll get the mercenaries really fast and they will push, and if the enemy team doesn't have enough PvE damage, they can't clear them in time, and you'll get more tempo advantage from that. On Hanamura, that's not the case. Hanamura, you get team fighting tools in exchange for your PvE strength. So you don't pressure the double support where they're weak. You just get to fight them on even ground in team fighting.
That makes sense. And even simple things like that can permeate out and really change how people play in the first place. Because I think most players want to reach a level where it's a day job kind of thing. Like everyone hates training. I know every time I've gotten a new job, I've been like, oh, I can't wait till this is standard, and I kind of can space out half the time and spend my time in my imagination. It's like talenting. I think most players just want to dig when they're new and say, finally, I can pick this talent set every game and just get efficient.
Yeah.
So none of the maps are going to get swapped around relatively soon. But overall, do we think this is here to stay? I'm sure because of the history of how they have made changes to this game that anything that kind of becomes the norm for too long, they want to shake up. So I'm sure there'll be a shake up at some point. Where do you think it's going to go? And where do you, I guess, is there a difference? Where do you think it's going to go? Is it different from where you hope it goes?
That's just such a tough question. Right now, with the information we have, I would say the most likely thing is supports will probably get their healing output reduced. Hopefully that's what they target, not like the utility in their kits or anything. But so let's say their healing output gets reduced as a result of having so much more armor in the game. You don't need as much healing output. In theory, that was one of the stated goals of the armor design and like initial concepts when they were putting armor into the game. So just with the healing reduced, you're nerfing supports, but you're also nerfing like the bruisers who rely on that armor to mitigate enough damage for the healers to keep them up. So I think there's kind of like a chain reaction there where if you reduce the healing coming out just by a little bit on average in the game, like the bruisers become a lot more killable the healers become less good to stack, and the range carries with poke become a lot more viable all at the same time.
And you encourage talent picks like possibly Tranquility, so you can make up for that lack you have.
Yeah,
maybe.
That's the other thing too. I mean, it's kind of hero specific, but they've always fought against auto pick heroics in the past.
Right, and I could even hear the pain in Dunk's voice as he's like, yeah, but it's also a frontline silence that's amazing and kills everybody, so
yeah,
I won't be taking Tranquility.
Yeah, Malf's an interesting case. Tranquility, I think the reason Tranquility is actually bad is because the mana on Twilight Dream is actually, like, secretly a huge portion of why Malfurion is broken. People don't really realize it because they feel like it's such a small thing, but the small extra mana regen you get from picking Twilight Dream is the difference between Malf never has to back for mana and Malf has to back for mana after every team fight. It's that big of a deal. Like, it's crazy. And I think people just don't realize that. And that's why Twilight Dream is actually broken.
Yeah, it's 1.25, which, if you're coming from World of Warcraft, you would already know that's pretty hot.
Yeah, I mean, it's always this kind of subtle pass. It seems like it's always those subtle passive things that come in with talents. It was the same case with Lucia when he hit. And it was the passive off the damage aura heroic, right? Yeah, like that kind of stuff always kind of sneaks in there. I could see that getting targeted as well. So, yeah, it would make... I can't imagine... Do you think that they would fall into the line of thinking that they need to mess with the utility on supports? It seems like healing should be the first dial to just play with.
I mean, well, we've seen it happen before, right? Like, for some reason, supports just get targeted with, I think, the most weird changes of any role, like Cleanse not being able to be targeted on yourself, Ancestral not being able to be targeted on yourself. Like, a lot of the changes that end up happening to healers, I feel like, are... in a sense, like, not as well defined as the changes that happen to damage dealers, because a damage dealer, like, you kind of know what they do, you know what their role is, and nerfing numbers feels right for that. Whereas a lot of times I feel like they kind of do weirder things with the healers that sometimes works out and sometimes doesn't.
That's a good thought too. I hadn't really thought about the, how they handle the different roles with it seems like different gloves when they go get into their balance updates. That's a really good point. So any closing thoughts on the double support chat before we move in and take some emails from our listeners? Nope. Okay, cool. Totally didn't have my soundboard up on my iPad, guys. All right, let's take some emails.
Darkness stopped calling.
Does anyone else hear that buzzing?
Hold on. Darkness just texted me.
You can send your emails to itncast@gmail.com. I have a couple of them for you here today. Blood Anubis writes in first and says, hey guys, going along the lines of welcoming new players into the Nexus. I see what you did there. You even hit it with all caps. You nerd. I had a question. Are there any goals you would recommend new players work to achieve? I'm not talking like shooting for Platinum in Team League, but sort of one step at a time level. In addition to this, are there any milestones you feel players should take the time to appreciate on their road to reaching their goals? Also, were there any milestones you guys were/are proud of? Thanks for all you do for the community. Thank you, Blood Anubis. Cool. Yeah, we can kind of tie this back into talking with how you coach Skara. What do we tell new players? Where should their heads be at? Is there a simple way to compartmentalize your road to understanding heroes?
Oh man,
I mean,
I don't think there's a simple path, but I would say play each hero once is what I would say. Like, you're going to pick a favorite, you're going to play them almost all the time, you're going to buy them, that sort of thing. They're going to be a higher level hero. That's going to be great. But during the free weeks, when you're a new player and you get the opportunity to play who you've never played before, you've only played against, take the time to at least play one game against that hero in a real game and see how things feel from the other side of those matchups, because there's a lot to be learned there. And when you finally get through playing every hero in the game once, I think that's like a cool moment,
There's this time period you get about 15 minutes in other MOBAs where if I was playing a hero for the first time or facing a hero in my lane for the first time, I really got to investigate them. Oh, what do they do? But in Heroes, you get about 2 minutes, and then it goes, well, you ready to team fight? We are. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And, like, how do you, like, you're right. That's the traditional way to learn those things. What do you do in a team fight when there's just so much information flying back and forth?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think learning how to team fight is a place where playing only one role gives you a big advantage. Because like if you, let's say you only play range carries, right? You will learn team fighting a lot faster than if you try to play every role, because each role has to approach the team fight so differently. But it's still worth the time to play every character once to know the specific mechanics of the character, and that way you can try and apply those back to how you play your team fight on a specific role. Yeah, if that makes sense. Like team fighting is something that's really hard to learn.
And then if you want to go even down, like deeper down the rabbit hole, specific heroes, even within a role, can completely change what you're doing in that role. Like Lucio, for example, with that hard engage. Most other supports aren't going to be doing that. Unless I'm Uther, because I'm going to run in and stun your face.
Something I'd like to add to this is breaking 20,000 on support. It means the damage that is. It means you are contributing enough auto attacks to actually be a force in that game. I mean, certain heroes, maybe Morales being one of the main supports that I just rarely ever see reach those kind of numbers, but that grenade hurts. And if you hold yourself to that level, even on any character, just making sure you get out enough damage to win the game, that's worthy of a pizza party. I'd say if the real milestone that I want you to like have an ice cream night about is when they take your bottom fort and you take their top. You were watching the mini map. You made an effective choice. You weren't going to defend that at all, and so you made the right one. That's when you shower that team in emotes and let them know how awesome they are and how good you feel.
Yeah, overall, learning when not to overreact or learning when it is appropriate to sacrifice something on the map in effort of gaining something for yourself is a really big aha, I see the light moment in Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, even learning when to sacrifice heroes, like in a losing team fight or something, is something that Hero League just has no idea how to do. I mean, teams will just fight down to the last man so often, and it's insane when, like, if you lose someone at the beginning of a team fight, unless you can immediately retaliate in the space of like 4 seconds to get a kill of your own, you should be disengaging that team fight probably. Like, it's probably not a good fight. So people just don't understand. You can just accept that you lost a team fight. You lost an objective because of it. Go get something else. It's way better than all piling on and be like, our Kael'thas went down first, guys. We got to avenge him, and just 4 people run in and feed.
Yeah.
Like, but I see that all the time.
I think it's partially socially engineered, though. And granted, this gets into my gripes from earlier, where I was talking, Garrett, what's going wrong with you on the ladder this week? It's terrible people. But I think it's very common for bad players to go in, die, and the first thing they do is all caps yell at you who ran away. When in reality, when you didn't engage in a 5v2, you were doing the correct thing. But you get this negative feedback, not from the game itself, but from the other person playing it, that if you're new to the game, you're going to think, oh, well, I shouldn't take this, but I don't want them to think I'm not helping them, so I'm going to go die for what?
Right. I think it's actually a too nice of a thing. Our World of Warcraft companions are coming over to this game, and they're like, oh, crud, if I don't throw out a heal on the dying tank, they're going to kick me from the raid. I need to at least be seen doing something. One of the experience I had this week was I was the Vala on a double support team, and my Chromie, this same Chromie, kept overextending and taking all the heals. And when I would get in the thick of it, they all started yelling, Vala, what are you doing on the front line? I'm like, well, I have double support. I'm supposed to be invincible up here, right? But Chromie's stealing all my shields.
I want everyone to go home tonight. Go watch The Patriot. Watch the opening scenes where those two armies are lining up and they're just dying and someone else walks up, takes the dead dude's place, and dies. That is not Heroes. There is no rule saying that you have to sit there with the etiquette of a Revolutionary War soldier and just die in a line beside your fellow soldier. No, take to the swamp and kill them with a tomahawk. Sorry, that was a analogy that just rammed into my brain and I had to get it out. So yeah, I've just been seeing so much of that this week, and I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's new players because 2.0 is here, if it's Overwatch players because of the cross promotion, whatever the case is. I've been seeing more of that this past week than I have in the previous months, and I just feel the need to remind everyone that it's okay not to die with your teammates. But yeah, other than that, I would like to backtrack to Dunk's very first point of trying every hero. Like, if you are playing on a budget and there's a hero you're seeing a lot of and it's not free to play, it's actually worth giving them a shot in try mode, if for no other reason. Hover over those abilities, see what those skill shots specifically. I'll use Alarak as an example because I'm seeing so much of him lately. If you're getting owned by Alarak and you've never actually seen the shape of his skill shot silence, that's easy to juke out of. Real easy to juke out of. And if you've never actually gone and looked at the shape before and also talent into it, so you see what shape it is afterwards, it's Kylo Ren's lightsaber, by the way. Take that into account, because the first time if you've played against him and you've never seen that, once you have the knowledge of the actual shape of the ability, it's going to completely change the way you approach this hero in a 1v1.
Yeah.
So I think that's all very good tips. So, thank you for your email, Blood Anubis, and I'm trying to answer like his side question, which was, were there any personal milestones you guys were/are very proud of? No, I can't. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
This is kind of weird because it's so old, but back in Heroes Technical Alpha, to level heroes to 10, it wasn't just experience on the hero. There were like things you had to do to get the levels on the hero, right? So instead of getting 500,000 experience on Illidan to get him to level 10, right, from 9, you had to like last hit opponents with he had an AoE nuke at the time, right, on his W. So you had to like last hit opponents with his W or something 10 times. And like that was one of the first milestones I was really happy about, because I got the final tint for the Illidan skin I liked the most. That was a big milestone for me back in Heroes Tech Alpha.
I completely forgot about that. What a dangerous carrot at the end of a stick for any game. It's just like, hey, I'd like to use this ability, even though it might not be the right time to use it, but
exactly,
just so you try and tick this box on a chart. Wow, yeah, I completely forgot about that. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is my first Master Scheme, which was Uther. I just wrote out there on my black and red Uther, which now has, it doesn't matter, 2.0's kind of removed that prestige to a certain amount, and that's fine because that means I can just use my Judgment Uther skin, which is way cooler looking anyway. But at the time, I was just like, yeah, look at me, I am the most pimped out Uther you've ever seen. Respect my Q. Yeah. My God, that was before Benediction was even a thing. How did I heal on Uther without Benediction?
Divine Shield, man, we didn't have any supports in the game, and making the Butcher or any of our like 5 assassins we had invincible for any period of time.
But Tech Alpha Uther, everyone was just taking Divine Storm.
They were. That's because when he died, his ghost would be able to cast it again.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
So you doubled the Divine Storm, get yourself killed.
Yeah, you were this suicide bombing Uther. It was absurd, which doesn't make sense for the Paladin in any way, shape, or form, but that's how Tech Alpha Uther was.
Yeah.
Oh, man, Tech Alpha.
Times.
Kyle, anything? It spark a memory now that we're traveling down that lane?
I mean, so many of mine don't work for Blood Anubis here because, he asked besides rank, and that has been many of my milestones, getting to Masters with Tychus and just becoming mechanically so amazing at him. It was a bizarre first-time experience in my life being just a single hero to that degree. And I have my pride moments, too, like getting to rank 1 with Diablo, Raynor, Uther as my core 3, when everybody hated Raynor, and they certainly hated my Diablo. And if you remember why, it was because at the time, Nazebo Ravenous Spirit was absurd, and there was Stitches running around, too, and he was amazing. And Diablo couldn't reach those guys to take him out, so I got really good at the death res of Double Apocalypse. Now that's not really a feature. A main tank, solo tank Diablo just doesn't fly anymore. He's more of an engaged tank that you want along with something that'll actually watch the back line.
Yeah. I remember your Raynor. I remember the day you showed up on Into the Nexus, like preaching the good word of Raynor. It was hilarious. You're just like, guys, you want to win? Just play Raynor. Learn to stutter step. You're golden.
Well, and we're going down the memory lane here, but the reason why I said that back in the day was because originally Raynor's gun shot no bullets. It just pinged on the suit, kind of like a Power Rangers suit damage exploding off them. So if you weren't actually watching your own character and the little pings appearing on them, there was no way to know that Raynor was attacking you. Mm-hmm. So I snuck in tons of kills on so many people with his superior range. And I'm thinking about him a lot this week because Hanamura is out. It's a fantastic bribe map, and I want it back on Raynor, man. Our bribe characters right now are so weird. Falstad, Lost Vikings, Nova, Murky, Brightwing. I just want something that's a range, just filling that role. Give it back. Give him back his Raynor's Raiders.
All right, let's take our second email before we wrap up. Bram writes in and says, hey guys, I'm loving the show and it got me back into Heroes after I quit for about 2 months. The subject I'm mailing about is a bit of a theory I've been cooking up and I'm curious what you think about it. I got to be careful not to make this too long. When drafting, a player shouldn't think about a role or what they want to play. They should think about doing a job. Jobs vary per map and against certain team comps, but they are not the same as roles. A job is peeling, for example, which is usually done by a tank, though some supports can do it too. Other jobs are things like solo laning, murking, pressuring enemy backlines, creating lane pressure, or double soaking XP. They can overlap a lot, but that's not really the point of naming something a job. It's about clarity and expectations for your team. If I pick Sonya, I know I'll be bad at peeling, but good at solo laning, putting pressure on squishies and murking. My team has seen what a Sonya can do and expect those things. If I don't do it, they can tell me to do your job, Sonya. If a player doesn't do what a team expects from that hero, there will be chaos. Healers start soaking alone. Tanks try to dive into the backline and mages focus warriors. Players should try and take responsibility for the jobs they can do with their hero. If they do it well, you can then say to them, good job. This is hilarious. So next time you draft, look at the map, think about what jobs there are to do, because it gives you the idea to take heroes that do what needed to be done instead of picking another warrior for no reason. What do you think?
This is great. This is something we've talked about a lot around here, which is avoiding indecision. One of the worst things you can do is do nothing. And by thinking about, as he says, your job, you'll go do exactly the best thing for you to do in that moment.
Yeah, I mostly think of what my job isn't, and that's what I tend to yell at other players, like the KT today who was face-checking bushes, like, Kael'thas, not your job.
Yep.
It is literally anyone else's job on this team but yours.
Yeah.
Something I'm seeing a lot right now is the solo laning support. But if it's Brightwing, that's her job because of global. So it can be even more nuanced the deeper you go in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dunk, do you think this is an effective way to break down the game?
I'm not sure about the terminology because to me, like what he's describing as jobs is actually what I think of when I think of roles. I think a lot of people, especially people new to the genre, just think in terms of Blizzard's role classifications like warrior, assassin, specialist, support. But to me, those don't mean anything. To me, those are like not really useful categories. So when I think of role, I don't think of those tags. I think what economic or team fighting purpose this hero brings to the game. And the reason I split it up into like economic versus team fighting is because I think those are like you get heroes with interesting mishmashes of what they do economically. Like you can have a hero who economically is a solo laner, but then in a team fight, it could be anything from a tank like Arthas, who's a solo laner economically team fighter tank, to like a solo laner Zeratul, which is not totally unreasonable economically, but then also in team fighting, he's a backline diver. So you've got this hero who like, so economically, if you need to fill a solo lane role, you need to also decide like what team fight role I want, and then decide your hero based off that. Whereas like just saying, oh, we need another tank here, if it doesn't fit the economic niche you still have available, then it doesn't make any sense.
That's
well said.
A good way to think about it. Also, I've always just been a fan of the phrase "know your role."
Mm-hmm.
That plays to that as well. I like the
frightening
idea.
to hear that, of course, because you're constantly striving to have enough practice and mechanical skills to win the video game. But what you said just made me feel awful about showing an early solo pick on Braxis, because I should be able to play such a huge, wide variety of them and react to the types of things they pick for their solo lane, which is, step one of many. And later in that is how you're going to interact with your own team when you finally meet up. And that's something that is really hard to picture.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the responsibility of everyone to draft around what everyone else does, too. But, like on Braxis specifically, the solo lane is probably the most important thing. You want to win you want a winning solo lane matchup. It's like one of the most important things, period, on that map. It just makes the game go so much easier if your solo laner has control of the beacon the whole game, right? So in that sense, maybe the only role that actually matters is the role of winning the solo beacon. So it just depends on the map and how you expect to actually win the game. Like, if you have to win a team fight to win the game, that's okay, as long as you draft the better team fighting comp. Whereas on Braxis, if you have to control the beacons to win the game, you can't do that if you have a losing 1v1 and you don't have a global, right?
That's interesting that you bring that up, and it speaks to something I've been thinking about a lot recently with my team league. I play with guys from other podcasts, and we all almost perfectly divide. We got 1 bronze, 1 silver, 1 gold, 1 platinum, and then me and diamond. When we get to Braxis, we almost always fail, and I take the solo lane because I feel like it would be the most mechanically important and biggest job to do there. But my team struggles in the bottom while I'm winning the top. If I'm in the bottom, the disappointment I feel when I see that solo laner guy die and the XP is leaking away just bums me out so bad that I go, oh, next time I'm going to be up there. I mean, where should I place myself?
Get it. I just want to
yell. A lot of people in this role too.
Play the global hero and make Bo, because I know Bo's on your team. Make him solo top.
Just do both. No big deal.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question because of the specifics. But a lot of times certain solo lane matchups, you can actually bypass your mechanical weakness if you have a strong enough matchup in a 1v1 hero situation. Like, you don't need great mechanics to win a matchup that you're heavily favored in. I'm trying to think of like what an example might be. I'm not a super expert on solo lane matchups just because that's not really my thing. But like a Sonya crushes almost any low damage solo lane matchup, and you don't need mechanical skill. You just need to know you spin on the creep wave and then walk away, and you'll win most lanes as Sonya. So like, you could try doing something like that.
That makes okay, yeah. So since Team League is more, select in any order, I can save that solo pick for last, use one of my maybe weaker players in that role, but absolutely make sure it's a strong counter to what is likely to be their pick. I even have a very stellar, mechanically good Artanis, which might just be enough to just say, just be skillful up there. Cool. I'm walking away from this definitely thinking that I am drafting that solo laner way too early, and I will do it much later on Braxis.
But the only thing there is, I think if you want to get Sonya, Sonya's going to go early in that draft on Braxis. She's a hot commodity right now. But, But beyond that, I mean, if she gets banned out early, cool. Then you can probably save your solo lane pick. But, all right. Well, thank you, everyone, for your emails. Again, the email address is itncast@gmail.com, and that's going to bring this episode of Into the Nexus to a close. As always, we are supported by our badass patrons over at patreon.com/ITN, who helped us reach our latest goal, which means, Dunk, you're going to be coming back once a month. We're going to be paying you for it, which is awesome. So thank you, everyone, for that. Thanks again to our producers, Declan H., Cheesy Bob, and Mythdoll. Catch us live Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on twitch.tv/amovetv or on alphageekmedia.com. Follow us on Twitter at ITNcast. And got to thank Bo, who better be solo topping for Kyle on Braxis from now on for our intro music.
No, this weekend's stream, he has informed me that he is a Genji main for now. So
I would just stop playing with him. I would just stop. Bo, if you can hear me, you're not allowed to play with me until you get this out of your system. But whatever the case is, we would like to thank him for our sick intro music. Also, thank you to BrianGriffithMusic.com for our outro music. Dunk, your guest today. Where can folks find you when you're not guesting on ITN?
You can find me on Twitter at DunkTrain or twitch.tv/DunkTrain. And that's about it.
Awesome. Also, everyone, even though Dunk isn't coaching anymore, definitely check out Try Hard for Good, because it's all for a good cause. Kyle, how about yourself?
You can find me this week on the stream I just mentioned, twitch.tv/Kyle Fergusson, 2 p.m. Pacific time. This Saturday will be Team League, the joyous regathering of the dudes from the core, Scott Johnson, John Jagger, and Bo Schwartz, with Kristen from Heroes Forge, another show on this very network. And I also like to pimp that I was on Jeff Kanata's show, DLC, this past week, and had an awesome time revealing my inflicted horrors by Outlast 2.
Awesome. I didn't know you guessed it. I'm actually behind. That's one of the few podcasts I still keep up with. I didn't know you guessed it, so I'll have to make sure and go listen to that episode. I'm a fan.
It was awesome. It's such a high-energy show. Really a great, records Mondays, and a great way to start your week.
Oh, 100%. You just start your week geeking out about video games that aren't Blizzard-specific. Like, you get to take a break, but not too much of a break, because it's still video games.
Right, it's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, you can find me on Twitter at Garrett Art. There are 2 R's and 2 T's in my name. Otherwise, I don't know who you're going to find. I don't know who that 1 R or 1 T Garrett Art is. Can't help you there. amove.tv is the website for not only this podcast, but every other podcast that I do. There's a Hearthstone show over there. There's a Warcraft show over there. I think they're all okay. Go give them a listen. And finally, nomoonart.com is my graphic design portfolio. If you need a graphic designer, check it out. Don't ask me why I named it that. It's pretty much because no one can spell my last name. No one can spell my last name. So that's going to do it for this episode. Until next week, good luck and have fun.
Take care.